So last week there was a big update for Le Mans Ultimate. Now, I'm sure many of you have tried it already, and within that update there was a big change to the GT3 Tyre model, and that's what we'll be chatting about today. So it's no secret, at the end of 2024 I worked with Motorsport Games to develop their GT3s before they were released at the back end of last year, something of which I did recently with iRacing. A couple of weeks ago I helped them with their most recent GT3 update. However, with this Le Mans Ultimate update I was not involved whatsoever, just so you lot know. I had no involvement behind the scenes, but I'm very interested to try this update, see what it's like. I'm curious to see how different it is to before, so let's do it. How good is this new Le Mans Ultimate update? Let's have a look. Okay, so like we always do in these videos, I'm going to head to Spa in the McLaren, because out of all the GT3s I know this car the best, and out of all the GT3s within Le Mans Ultimate I probably have driven it the most as well, so it makes the most sense. But before we get into this particular topic, it's worth saying, you know, holistically, or at a high level, Motorsport Games are smashing Le Mans Ultimate out of the park at the minute. You know, with the announcements they've had. Obviously, we've had this update, but over the Le Mans weekend there were quite a few big announcements. I suppose my favourite one being that they've teased the Valkyrie, Aston Martin Valkyrie, which, you know, I can't wait for that to come out. What a car that is in real life, hopefully in the game as well. They announced the Mercedes-AMG GT3 is coming. There was a big announcement with the ELMS, or the European Le Mans Series, coming to Le Mans Ultimate as well. So a complete new series, the LMP3 car. And I suppose the biggest announcement I saw was the fact that it's going to become a V1.0 fully fledged game next month, so July 22nd. So yeah, it's all kicking off on this game right now. It really is starting to pop off. The popularity is starting to grow quite a lot. So before we get into this specific topic of how good is the GT3 update specifically, you know, it's worth saying they are doing an amazing job with this title. To keep the video fairly balanced, I mean, it wasn't all smooth sailing with this update. There were quite a few bugs, you know, quite a few funny bugs actually. There was like the 0% tyre wear thing, where people would just spawn into a session and have absolutely no grip on their tyres.
My tyres are minus 200 degrees!
You now have to change your tyre set manually, whereas before it was automatic, which is really annoying, as it does catch you out quite a few times. There was, for example, in the GT3 fix races, some, you know, you could actually use open setups. So, you know, to begin with, I was unaware of this, and I was just lapping around on fixed setup versus people who were using an open setup. So lots of weird bugs that have crept in. But to be fair, they've been throwing out the hot fixes quite quickly, so I think they are trying to rectify these issues pretty sharpish, which is good to see. And I suppose the biggest change that needed to happen, and the tyres have been changed effectively to alter the way you get the lap time out of these cars, which previously was a little bit unrealistic. So it was all about sliding and drifting effectively, particularly on entries, and sort of absolutely sending the car into the corner on entries, and effectively just abusing the slip angle of the tyres. So, you know, in a way, backing the car, you know, with the rear of the car, backing it into the corners, sort of how you used to do it back in the R Factor 2 days. Or probably even still a little bit on R Factor 2, you know, where it was quite slidey and drifty. It was a little bit like that. Not as extreme, but definitely towards that side of the scale. The grip loss just seemed really, really gradual, and I think that's why it allowed this driving style to work, because you could just lean on the tyres an insane amount. Now, without being directly involved with this update, I don't know specifically what they changed with the tyres. I'm like all of you lot, I just see what they released in the patch notes and the very basic description of, you know, we've changed the tyres to stop sliding and drifting, you know, that sort of stuff. But of course I can play the net result, I can play the game, and that is the most important thing, so I can still feed back my thoughts. And yeah, what I would say is it's definitely a step in the right direction. Sliding like before and drifting the car into entries and abusing those slip angles definitely doesn't work anymore if you want to get the most out of the car. You can't exploit that characteristic anymore, which is good. However, I think they may have gone slightly too far with it. So what do I mean by that? I mean, first of all, GT3 cars, you know, especially when, say if you don't have tyre warmers enabled, they can be quite sketchy, and, you know, they can catch you out, and they do go on you. You don't just have unlimited grip, but this is particularly hard the way it is at the minute. It's very tricky to even, in some cases, just get the car around the track. It's very cutthroat, and the grip loss does seem instantaneous, which is complete opposite to the way it was before. So as I say, they've gone the right direction, but I think just a bit too far. You know, ironically, it's a little bit like iRacing used to be before the recent iRacing GT3 update. You know, that whole thing of, right, I've got grip, and then, you know, within a split second, you've got no grip. And it's a little bit, it's not exactly the same as that. There are loads of differences, but it reminds me of that a little bit. And yeah, with the tyre model being like this, I feel like it's personally a bit of a turn-off for a lot of sim racers, because there's nothing more infuriating than going out to just enjoy a bit of driving and constantly spinning and crashing. Whereas before, yes, the driving style was a little bit unrealistic at the limit, but it was easy enough to get the car around the track, just enjoy a few laps. Whereas now, it's hard. Like, even me and other people who do sim racing a lot struggle with the way it is at the minute. You know, it's worth saying you can catch slides and oversteer moments. So, like, when I referred to it, you know, and compared it to the previous iRacing GT3s, that was real cutthroat at times. Like, if you got a slide, it was very, very, very hard to catch. Like, you can catch oversteer moments, but I feel like the oversteer moments come on very, very easily. And on the flip side of it, the understeer, if you go past that slip angle of the front tyre now, the understeer is quite chronic. So overall, it just makes for a very difficult driving experience if you don't put the time and work into the various areas to make it easier. On a different note, let me quickly pull over a minute and return to garage, because I need to read a quote I saw on Twitter the other day, or X, from David Perel, who pretty much all of you will know races GT3s in real life and sim races quite a bit as well. And he said, sim racing tyre models are still a bit too sensitive to slides and spins. In real life, we have more room for movement across the surface, but in the rig, it seems that if we improve the drivability in this area, we increase the tyre grip too much and the lap times are too quick. Finding the balance is difficult. I want to be able to attack corners more in the rig like we do in real life, and we're not quite there yet. The good news is the devs are listening and they're trying to make the steps in the right direction. The teams from iRacing, Le Mans Ultimate and Assetto Corsa are all using real racing drivers for feedback in the modern sims, and that's epic. So I thought there were some really good points. I think he hits the nail on the head in what he says. Very well summed up there by Dave, Coach Dave. So what I would say with this Le Mans Ultimate update, though, is setups do have, or they seem to have, a massive effect on even just the drivability, more so than usual, I suppose. So at the minute, I took the old Go setups as my inspiration, and I was just tweaking them down and making it a bit more safe and changing a few things to make it more drivable, and I ended up with something that seems drivable. I can take Eau Rouge, I can take Stavelot 2, and I can take Blanchimont flat, which is always a good sign around Spa and a GT3 that the setup's in a fairly decent place. Because yeah, the fixed setups, when I tried them, I mean, I guess some fixed setups are worse than others depending on the car you're in, but for the McLaren around Spa, it was absolutely awful. Like, just was so far off with it, and drivability was nowhere as well. And that's the thing, you know, when the tyre model is so unforgiving, which it is now, the setups do play more of an effect when it comes to drivability. So they've got to be worked on a bit more to make it feel half decent. So yeah, this should give us a decent base to get a decent gauge of where this tyre model's at. I think setups will develop a lot over the coming days and weeks. I've not spent too long on this one. I literally spent 45 minutes on it, but you know, in the coming weeks, when the setup shops figure out, right, what parameters do we need to tweak to get this GT3 in a better place to make the most of this tyre model whilst making it drivable, and maybe we'll see people enjoying these cars a bit more. And yeah, maybe it is just the setups are so far off at the minute. It's hard to say. Another big change within this update with these cars is the ABS is quite a lot different now. I saw a screenshot, which I'll put on the screen right now, which basically gives you the rough lowdown on what each ABS setting does now within the GT3 cars, and it's a bit more complicated to what we're used to. Usually in sim racing, you know, we've come to know that ABS, the higher the number, the more ABS is at work. The lower the number, the less ABS there is. And if you have ABS off, it's off, right? So that's just generally as far as we've really thought about ABS and how it works within sim racing. However, in real life, it doesn't always work like this. Depending on the car you're driving, ABS can be a bit more complicated than the higher the number, the more ABS you have. There are more elements to it. Basically, the manufacturer will program various ABS maps to a certain number, but it doesn't always have to be in the chronological order of 1 is less ABS, 9 is more ABS. And this goes for other electronic aids as well, like TC, engine map. Again, it's not always as logical as 1 to 10 is low to high. And yeah, that's why I suppose it's super important to read the manual if you're ever to race a real-life GT3 car. That's exactly why, for these specific niche bits of information. I mean, last year I read the McLaren manual probably about 1 billion times, and not gonna lie, I still didn't remember a lot of the maps and what they did. I tried my best to memorize them, but it's kind of impossible unless you have a photographic memory, which I don't. But yeah, a bit off topic, but I think it's cool they add these extra layers to the sim to bring it closer to realism, because I suppose it brings the player base closer and helps them. I suppose it educates them about how these cars are and how they actually work. Which I suppose is an interesting point. I mean, a lot of us just play these games for fun, but I suppose a byproduct of that is, providing the sim is realistic, is that you learn more about, in this case, GT3 racing and GT3 cars themselves. And then so when you watch like a real life race like Le Mans or Daytona, you'll have a way better understanding of what's going on and all the intricacies of GT3 racing compared to your average Joe who doesn't sim race. Which I think is pretty cool, to be honest. I mean, it's another reason to get into sim racing. So I've never really thought about that too much, but it definitely is a thing, and it's only going to get better the closer these simulators get to real life, and all these little details over time. It's definitely going to help in that area as well. So back to the cars themselves a minute. So one thing they have adjusted in this update is they've increased the steering weight feeling at lower speeds. So it does feel a bit heavier now when going through T1, coming out the pits, even the final chicane as well. Which, I mean, some of you may remember one of my biggest complaints initially with the GT3 cars on the One Ultimate was the fact that they felt a bit too light and they lacked that heaviness, weighty feeling that, say, ACC simulates so well. So I can definitely feel a little bit of progression there, actually, in the low speed. It definitely feels a bit heavier. The cars feel more planted to the ground as a result of that. So I think that's a nice little tick in the box there. I'm glad they've done that. And yeah, another small thing, they've adjusted the fuel usage and how that correlates with engine RPM. So what they think that means is short shifting won't be as beneficial anymore. So maybe something to try is just rev out every single car to the absolute limit of the RPM range. That might be the way to go to get the most out of it on the straights. Anyway, let's finally go and take this thing for a full push lap just to see what happens. So the driving style's a little bit different to before now, as we've already spoken about. I'm going to rev it out all the way to the end of the RPM range. Still running the TC quite low, and you can see I am on the limit of grip on the exit, but I think that is the best way to go. I think you don't want to run the TC too high. Eau Rouge was just about flat there. But if you don't have anything remotely decent when it comes to a setup, Eau Rouge will be a big problem and it won't be flat and you'll lose a lot of time. Into Sector 2 then. Got to really concentrate with this new tyre model, otherwise I will loop it and end up in the barrier. The other thing as well, the track limits are way more strict now than they used to be. That's another change that's happened in this update. See, P1's always really sketchy in Le Mans Ultimate. I think the grip there is quite low into Pith Path. It's just a very narrow driving window now. Stavilo 2's just about flat. It's not easy flat though. You got to get the line right. And you can see the amount I'm having to concentrate to really nail everything here. It is really tough. It's definitely not plug and play anymore. Blanchemont's still easy flat into the final chicane, then we can brake quite late actually. So, using all the track on the exit of the chicane, what's the lap time going to be? We're in quali trim, so low fuel, new tyres, 2:19.1. So, yeah, we'll see the GT3 cars go a lot quicker than that. But for the minute, the setup feels okay. As I say, flat in Eau Rouge, flat in Stabilo 2 and Blanchemont. Feels okay in most of the areas of the track at the minute. Maybe a little bit understeery, but it's safe. And yeah, it took me a little while to get it even feeling like this. So yeah, not easy. So there we have it. The new Le Mans Ultimate update is a step in the right direction. I think it still needs a fair bit of fine-tuning, which I'm sure will happen at some point. Sorry, it took me a little bit longer than usual to get this video out, but better late than never. Let me know down in the comments below what you guys think of this update. Are you enjoying it? Are you not enjoying it? Let me know. And yeah, thank you as always for watching the video. Give it a like and subscribe if you did enjoy it. And yeah, I'll see you lot on the next one.